I want to talk about the phrase learning to deal with anger. Learning to deal with anger. There's two purposes for this kind of message. One message is I want to help you deal with your anger. You may not have challenges with your anger, but if you ever do in the future, I'll help you deal with it. And secondarily, more importantly, I want to equip you to help other people deal with their anger. Because if you're a part of the body of Christ, and if you're a servant of God, if you're a minister, which you are, minister just means servant. So since you're all ministers, you're all servants, you will have opportunities to help. Now let me mention too that I've had opportunities recently, back in December, the first week in December, I went down to Sutherland Springs. Now if you don't remember where Sutherland Springs was, that was the little church that was shot up, little Baptist church was shot up. It was shot up the 1st of November, and I got to go down there 1 month later and got to go down there then in the 1st of December. And what we did down there is I went down to the church that Terry Post pastors, and we did a study I'm doing right now. I did it 2 weeks ago up in Harrison, Arkansas, is we do an interactive study about the book of Job. And because the book of Job helps outline how you can help other people. So we did that down in Sutherland Springs, and then that night we got to put it into practice. I went over, I told you about this at the time, but I went over to the little church, which had flowers up, kind of a memorial, and there were people around, and a lot of the people were family members who had family members shot up and killed at that church. And we got a chance to practice what we were saying. And that night, I listened to a family for 3 hours. And of course, the biggest thing we point out in the book of Job, Job's 3 friends did not do Job any favors. Job got into a bad attitude, but the 3 friends, the book of Job says, they gave bum advice. And so their heart may have been good, but they gave bum advice. But for the first 7 days, Job's friends showed up. They sat and said nothing. And that was the best thing they did. And so mostly when you're helping someone, you want to say less, you want to listen more. And so you can't just flap out all these quick answers. These quick answers don't help people. It's best to listen and be there for them. And then if you have a chance to speak, you want to say the appropriate thing. So that's what I did down there in Sutherland Springs. And I've been doing that now as my guest sermon. Like next week, I'll be giving a Bible study and a sermon up in Kansas City. And I'm sure in the Bible study, I'll probably do interactive about the book of Job. And what we'll probably do is the same thing. My goal is to help people be prepared to help others. And so we did that 2 weeks ago up in Arkansas, and I'll hopefully do that next week in Kansas City. The point is, and the point we make in the interactive study is this. When we give answers in the study, I say we're doing this to learn ourselves, but you don't necessarily give these answers too quickly to the people you're trying to help. In other words, timing is everything. And waiting and not talking quickly, but listening mostly is better than just flapping and saying a lot of answers. So the point is, in the sermon today, there will be things I will mention in the sermon that hopefully help you help other people. That doesn't mean you're going to quote these things quickly to somebody, because you have to wait for the right time to say things. So this is kind of like a training part, a training episode, to go through things that you don't go out and just repeat these things the very next moment. You may not have a chance to say some of these things to someone maybe for 6 months or maybe a year or whenever. It's to help you be prepared and then use judgment of how quickly you talk to others. Did I say that clearly enough? Learning the information, gathering the information, being prepared, and then using wisdom of how we help others. So when we talk about anger, you have anger, so it'll help you, but you have a chance to help people. There's a very angry world out there. So just instead of launching in right away and quoting all these things, you'll pick and choose the right way to help. Now, a couple points before we get started. Let's go over to Revelation chapter 12:12. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these scriptures, and I'm going to read a lot from Charles Stanley. This is the kind of thing, to be honest, as I talk to our speakers, a lot of times the difference between a Bible study and a sermon, a lot of times the Bible study spends more time in the Bible, and the sermon, which is based on the Bible, sometimes has other things to bring up as well to kind of enhance the Bible or to help use the Bible. But Revelation 12:12, therefore rejoice, O heavens, and those who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you having great wrath because he knows he has a short time. There's much anger in this world. And my view of the devil from the Bible is that he is a very angry being, and he is spawning others to be very angry as well. Like there are scriptures in Ephesians 2 that talks about calling him the prince of the power of the air. There's a lot of anger right now. Now, I don't want to give the impression that it's 10 times worse than it's ever been. In fact, I was listening to a guy on the radio yesterday, and he was bringing out some facts about like Supreme Court nominees. And we've been through this before with Robert Bork. We've been through this before with Clarence Thomas. The point being is, yes, there are challenges presently right now, but he bringing out the facts. He doesn't want people to think that it was always rosy every other time and now is the worst it's ever been. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. But, it was bad under people feeling badly during the time of Nixon, during the time of Carter, during the time of Reagan. There was fighting. So the point is, it's bad. I don't want to lessen the fact that it's bad out there and there's a lot of anger, but we don't want to make it like it's 100 times worse than it's ever been. We've weathered these things before, and we have to look at how God helped people through those times, and we want to help people through times again. That's the only point I want to make about that. But it's an angry time. But we don't have to say it's the worst time. We don't even have to compare with past time. We just need to deal with the reality of the anger that's out there. There's a lot of anger in the world. Also, the second concept I want to mention, there's anger directed toward you. And of course, you'll be having friends that there's anger directed toward people. There's places in the Bible, let's look over in Acts chapter 7. Stan read up to it. He read chapter 6. And of course, he read about some of the challenges there. Because in chapter 6, we saw that they were looking for false prophets. They were looking for people telling lies, and that's what was done. They were telling lies about Stephen. And of course, chapter 7, then he launches into his defense of how he dealt with the lies. And he gave history and facts about things. But they were talking about false witnesses, looking for ways to get him in trouble. Verse 6:11 said, he speaks blasphemous words against Moses and God. That just wasn't true. He wasn't speaking blasphemous words against Moses or God. Of course, Moses being the lawgiver and the importance of the law, that was so important to people, they actually mentioned his name before they mentioned God's name. But again, there was trouble, so there was anger directed at Stephen. And don't be surprised when there's anger directed at you or against people you know, when you're trying to deal with it yourself or you're trying to help other people. So we're talking about anger that's directed at you. This information I want to give you today helps you when there's anger directed at you. But let's look at Mark chapter 3, verse 5. But we're not just talking about anger directed at you. There's also anger emanating from you. You see what I'm saying? We're dealing with anger that comes toward us, but we're also dealing with anger that comes from us. Now I want to look at Mark 3:5, because it makes a point here that I think is very important, that Jesus had anger. But of course he never sinned, so thereby he had perfect anger. Anger is not sin of and by itself. But it can become sin, and to human beings it does become sin way too many times. Christ had anger. So if you were to analyze, is it okay for you to have anger? Yes, there's some things you should be angry about. There's certain things, but again, what becomes of that anger? What does the anger turn into? And quite frankly, a lot of the times, a very basic thing about human beings and human psychology, a lot of times people they don't address their anger. And we all know what a trash compactor is. If you just keep the anger inside and just put more trash on top of it, the anger is inside, and likely what happens if people don't learn how to vent their anger, if they don't learn how to channel their anger, if they don't learn how to deal with their anger, oftentimes that's when people explode. So someone say, David, you get worried about people who vent anger. Well, not of and by itself. In fact, I think venting anger constructively is a good thing. I'm more concerned about the people who don't vent their anger, keep it inside, and those are the ones who explode. Now, again, with the school shootings that go on and the church shootings that go on, they try to have a system in place, and that's open for big discussion by politicians and law enforcement professionals. But people talk about, what do you have tips? Do you have things you see? Of course, then you have to always worry about Big Brother and people misinterpreting comments that are safe and secure. So you always have that. But sometimes there are signs people have, but the ones you worry about the most who never give you any warning at all. They just keep it inside, and all of a sudden they can't handle it anymore. Now, I'm certainly not one to support anyone taking their own life. I think there's never a reason to take your own life. I see in the Bible there are people who considered death would be a good thing. And they're talking about Moses, Job, Jonah, Elijah. All of them said, boy, it would almost be better if I were dead. So I understand if people have those thoughts, but people who have those thoughts never need to ever go to the step of doing it. And that's why, again, if people express frustration, you have to help people who express frustration go get through that and move on. But I will say this, just as a statement of just trying to understand people. People ask, why would anyone ever take their own life? And of course, there's a lot of factors why people make an excuse to do so. But I just want you to remember one little thing as a means to help people. To help people is people are just tired of hurting. I don't think that being tired of being hurting is real. Tired of hurting is something that needs to be dealt with. And of course, we want to help people find biblical answers, scriptural answers, spiritual answers from God. But, at least understand, when you're trying to help someone, you watch them hurting, you want to help them find positive things to do. Because a lot of their anger, a lot of depression anger is anger at themselves and disappointment at themselves. So the point is, you want to help people deal with their anger because they're tired of hurting. And I'm not talking about, some people are just tired of hurting physically, and some people are just tired of hurting emotionally. So anger, if you see someone angry, don't take the self-righteous, snobbish approach of, well, if you are a person of God, you would never be angry. Christ was angry. It says here, when he looked around at them with anger, and he was angry because, they have a hardness of their heart. He watched the people belittle those who were sick. He watched the people judge other people. Unfortunately, religion tends to have people judge each other, but see, that is not the ideal thing of religion. That is not the fruit of the church of God. It should not be judging each other. That is human nature. It is set up and enforced by religious institutions. But we need to be kind to each other. As we talk about regularly, we have conviction and compassion. Because we need to be people who believe in something, but we also have to be compassionate to others who don't. That's the beauty of our interactive Bible study. We're working on one now where I'm trying to tell people that help me understand this. Why do you believe a certain way you do? And I'm hoping they can do it with scriptures and logic and truth and ideas. And we just share with each other. That's the beauty of the interactive study. Because we want people to grow. We want to learn. We want to be kind toward each other. But see, again, so there's a lot of anger in this world. There's a lot of anger directed toward us and toward other people. But there's also anger emanating from us. Of course, the Bible says, be angry, but sin not. And don't let the sun go down in your wrath. But I'd like to spend the rest of this sermon quoting from Charles Stanley, who's a pastor in the Baptist denomination. He's written at one point 35 books. I'm sure that's quite a bit more by now. But I didn't take the time to Google to see what his latest count is. He has a book entitled Surviving in an Angry World. I actually have written articles about this for Among Friends. I covered some of these principles in past sermons. I'd like to go through them again because they're so good. The title of the book is Surviving in an Angry World, Charles Stanley. He wrote, "Anger is a feeling. It is a strong emotion that is often intertwined with other emotions. We need to be honest about our emotions. They are our frontline response to life. As much as a person may desire or strive to act and live in a rational, objective, and dignified manner, acting that way all the time is not realistic. We respond to life events first out of our emotions and with a basic two-option determination. I like this or I don't like this. We decide whether something is good or evil, right or wrong, helpful or harmful, almost instantly. Most people make up their minds before they have the time or the opportunity to gather objective data and determine the best decision to make." Breaking from the reading, isn't that what happens? Oftentimes we have an emotional first response instead of thinking it through of why we don't like something or how we're going to respond to something. God created us with emotions, and that's why emotions are good. Mourning is good. All these different things that God created. Now, again, good things can be taken out of context and become sin. And we don't want our emotions to lead us to sin. We do not want our emotions to become sin. But we recognize God created emotions as the first reaction, the first response. And so when Christ was angry, but he did not sin. Paul said, "Be angry, but sin not." Back to the reading. God, who created every aspect of our being for our good, made us feel and express emotions. He created us with a capacity to feel love, joy, and peace. The Lord also allows us to experience frustration, hate, and fear. He gave us specific emotions to help us intuitively and immediately recognize danger, injustice, and evil intent. In fact, there's a book in our library, called The Gift of Fear. Again, so it talks about it's good to fear a rattlesnake. It's good to fear a bear charging at you. Again, obviously, there's many wrong uses of fear, but it's good to fear having your house on fire. So again, the balanced approach to that. Back to the reading. God intends for us to experience, express, and use our emotions to direct right behavior. They are intended to be triggers that prompt us to action, and our actions to be guided toward good and godly ends. Breaking from the reading again, are you getting this from two levels? One level is how you deal with things, and one level is how can you help those around you who are dealing with severe anger. And we're going to see how severe anger manifests itself. Again, you may not be able to quote these things to the people right away, but the more you understand it, then the more you might be prepared to help people when the troubles come up. Your own troubles, but more importantly, I don't think you're an angry person generally. But of all the people you know, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be angry and will need your help if you have the opportunity to do so. Back to the reading. Your emotions are never to rule over you. You are to be the master of your responses and reactions. The person who allows himself to be ruled by emotion is on a continual roller coaster. He has failed to resolve the issues that trigger an emotional response and is always pulled from one high to the next low. Such a person is easily swayed by others and very often acts out in inappropriate, unproductive, or ungodly ways. So I know you'll hear people say, emotions are bad because people let the emotions rule them. Well, the truth is emotions are good. Letting the emotions rule you is a negative thing, and we need to not let that happen. Let me show you from page 71. He put a list here together, and so you can see how different anger influences a lot of world conditions. Some of yours and some of the people you come across. Sometimes your kids or grandkids, sometimes your parents. Here's what he says. Anger and hatred equals rage. He says anger and bitterness equals revenge. He says anger and worry equals a divided mind. He says anger and confusion equals turmoil and indecision. He says anger and insecurity equals manipulation and control tactics. He says anger and stress equals burnout. He says anger and resentment equals retribution. He says anger and fear equals an irrational response. And he says anger and sorrow equals disorientation and an inability to function. In his theory, the way he presents it, the common denominator is anger. But with a little twist on it, it has a different direction, takes it a little direction. So sometimes, again, discouragement and depression oftentimes involves anger. Or it's not always, because sometimes people get to the point of depression where one thing about depression can be a loss of hope. And so a person can first be angry and get to the point they just tune out. Again, this information is so hopefully with your prayer and study and your other reading, you can be ready, even though you're not going to be giving answers to everybody all the time, that you can be ready to help a hurting world. I'm going to quickly go through the 10 steps he gives. The 10 steps. I'd like you to think about these for yourself and then see how well you can relate these to others at the right time. Step 1 is to admit your anger to God, which indicates we have a relationship with God. Hopefully encourages people to pray. Hopefully people understand there is a God and they will be able to form a better relationship with that God. Step 2, identify the source of your anger. And of course, if you're trying to help someone, that's a very important thing. You don't want to ask too many questions, again, but a lot of times you're helping people get to the point to find out what they're really angry about. I mean, a lot of times, this is true many times when people have a complaint. Even I'm thinking in my mind, okay, what is this person really angry about? Are they ready to face what they're really angry about? Is there any way that I can possibly lead them to find out what they're really angry about? And sometimes I just don't know. If I come into a situation, if it's someone I know well, I can pretty well quickly find out what they're angry about. If it's someone I don't know, sometimes it takes a while to get that because the person's in denial, and if they're in denial, they don't always open the door for you. But again, for yourself, you want to know what you're really angry about. Many times when husbands and wives fight, it's not really, the joke is it's not about the toothpaste. Do they squeeze the toothpaste in the middle or do they roll it up from the bottom? That's maybe what the argument was about, but that's really not where the anger is. So you try to get to the source of that. Step 3, purpose in your heart to give up all rights to anger. Step 4, take a time out. It's funny, my little grandson, I forget what I was watching something on TV, and I used the phrase time out. Maybe it was I was watching a basketball game. And Jonathan and I were there, and little Alexander was there, and I said, there's a timeout. His head spun around because timeout to him means you put in a chair and have to sit there by yourself. And so I said, no, this is something that happens in basketball. They're doing it. And I explained it to him because he thought, he heard me say the word timeout. He was wondering, I didn't do anything to be put into a timeout. Why are you bringing timeout for? So take a timeout. Number 5, get to the root of the problem. Number 6, voice your anger to the one who can help you the most. Step 7, redirect your energy. Step 8, reset your personal emotional dial. You see why this is something you formulate, you meditate on personally, and then if you're going to help people with these things, you have to have a relationship with them and wisely help them to redirect things. Step 9, predetermine how you will respond in the future. Again, this is someone who's on a basis of improving, dealing with their anger. They can kind of preset their limits or preset what they're going to do. It's kind of like a long time ago, there was a man in the church I was in named Herman Hay. We called him Dr. Hay. And he used to talk about that if he was ever accosted by a prostitute, he would run. And I think finally when he was accosted by a prostitute, he actually ran. Well, that's presetting your reaction. I mean, someone may have thought that was a strong reaction. He maybe didn't have to do that. Maybe he could just politely walked away or firmly said no and walked away. But I remember that example from 30, 40 years ago because it was like he was presetting his reaction. It'd be bad if he said, it would be bad if a person said, I'm going to spend some time hugging her for a half hour and see then what I'm going to do. That would not be the right that's not the right reaction to preset. That's not the right thing to do. So predetermine how you'll respond in the future. Think about how you would respond to things. In step 10, set emotional goals and key relationships. I know there's a lot there. I present it to you, again, for you to chew on it, drink it in, think about it, maybe get the book and read about it if you'd like to do that. We have a copy in the library. Think about those things. And the more then this becomes part of your life, then you can give it out in little bits and pieces at the appropriate time. But again, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to give you answers. I'm trying to give you solutions with the scripture, but try to give you some practical solutions that can be helpful for you. That way you're moving forward, you're not letting anger control you. And then you have all this wealth of information. Ask God, please guide me to say the right things, to be the right person, to help people deal with it. I'd like to conclude the message with 2 chapters from the book. This is on page 91. Dr. Stanley wrote, keep these 3 principles in mind in dealing with your anger. Number 1, prevent what you can prevent. Number 2, learn from what you cannot prevent. And number 3, ask God to help you lay aside angry responses that do not bring about a positive result. I'd like to have you think about those for yourself and reflect those. Maybe in doing so, you can help other people. Prevent what you can prevent. What you can do, do. If you can't prevent, learn from it. If you had a situation where you were angry, looking back on it, learn from it. Hopefully you didn't botch it up too badly, but even if you botched it up pretty badly, learn from it. And then again, ask God to help you. Try to be positive. Try to stay positive. And even things we talk about with our tongue, and even what we listen to, reports, try to be positive. Friends, I don't have time for drama. I don't have time for a lot of negative nonsense. And so while it could be, again, I will get involved in if I'm trying to help somebody, I will do whatever I can to help somebody. But just idle negative, yeah, I don't have a lot of time for idle negative. I'm pretty busy. I'm pretty busy getting haircuts and letting my hair grow back again. I can't even get my wife to give me a haircut. I'm so busy, and she's busier than I am. Back to the reading. Some anger is so deep that only the grace of God can heal it. The anger has been there for so long, has become such a part of daily life, that the person cannot possibly free himself. The good news is that no degree of anger is beyond God's reach. Ask the Lord to prune any anger from your heart. You see how that could be good for you. Now, again, you just can't even spout that off to someone who's dealing with anger because you don't know their relationship with God. You don't know if they view God like a harsh father they had or a harsh mother they had. Or maybe they've been hurt by a school system or the government or somebody. And so just giving these beautiful platitudes, the timing has to be right. I hope when you let these words sink in, and they can be for you, that you can accept the grace of God to heal you from the anger that you've got, the situations that have happened to you. And then you can become free, to truly become free. And then God can help you with this. And God can help you deal with any anger that comes and help prepare you to deal with anger that we thrust at you in the future. And not only can you be a blessed and happy person, I hope that you can be a tool of God to help other people. So I hope that learning to deal with anger can help you and help others you come in contact